Welcome back to Theology for the Unwanted. I'm Dan Tilson, your host, and across from me we have my trusty co-host, John Byram. Say hey.
Hey.
You know, we have the Catholic LGBT conference coming up in a few months. And
it's in June, right?
It is in June. It's in Washington, D.C. again, thank goodness. Yep, people are going to be staying at my house. Hotels are expensive. But you were putting together business cards.
Yes.
Yeah, you gave yourself a title.
It was a title you gave me at your book launch.
What was it?
Chief of Staff.
Yeah. I work in politics.
Yes. So we're going to make that one of the official titles. It's going to be Executive Producer and Chief of Staff.
Oh, man. Well, if you're new to this podcast, we are talking to Catholics and former Catholics who have felt unwanted in their parish. That's right. We are not saying marginalized. We are saying unwanted because that is a theological reflection in itself. We have a really cool show tonight. We will be talking through focus missionaries. No, we're not bashing them. We are going to be talking about the good and the bad and honestly some of the brand new things that they bring to theology and then what our experiences were like being around focus missionaries on a college campus about 15 years ago. So
it's been a while.
It's been a while. That's right. Right before the show, I called my brother to verify some of the practices and he was like, "Oh, we've never heard of that."
we had to Google quite a bit to figure out. I was like, wait, are they still doing this or did they get rid of it? Or?
It turns out after 2015, they had a pretty serious change of mental model.
For the good, I would think.
Yeah. Well, tell me about your week, man.
Oh, it's been a crazy week. I went down to Richmond. I had to support our alma mater, the defending A10 champions women's basketball team for George Mason. Unfortunately, they came up 2 points short of repeating. Congrats to Rhode Island, the Rams, Rhodey, if you will. They won there. But yeah, it was a very interesting trip down there. But I have to say, probably one of the more unique parts of it was when we were driving back. Because I was with my good friends, Matt and Nikki. They're married. And Nikki was telling me about how her brother actually just recently enlisted into the armed services.
Love it.
Literally, like the day before America started the war in Iran.
Oh, geez. They say that if you're going to buy life insurance, you should do it the day before you die, but you should definitely not enlist in the military the day before a war.
Yeah, well, I don't think anyone knew it was starting on that Saturday per se.
Everyone knew.
So he enlisted. And he was getting nervous about it. And, I grew up in a military family. I lived overseas for my entire childhood. So one of the things that, Nikki asked me to do was to talk to her brother and kind of, put his mind at ease a little because, obviously, like you said, you don't want to enlist when we're going into the Middle East for like the fifth time in 30 years for another war. So, he was nervous about it. And we talked through it a little bit, and I told him, I said, look, you're going off the basic. That's going to be X amount of weeks. Then you're going to be going to A school. So like, you're going to be in training for like another X amount of months. And plus I'm like, and this is not a knock on any branch or anything. I'm very favorable of the Navy. The Navy raised me, but my thing is he's joining the Air Force and he's going to be an aircraft mechanic. So it's not like he's going to get put in an air base in Tehran, right? He's
right.
Like, if he gets deployed after basic, after he goes to school for training, it's going to be like in England and Germany and Italy, someplace that we have an air base, and he'll be working on airplanes there. Like he's not going to be, as they say, boots on the ground like Army and the Marines would.
Well, God bless Brandon.
Yeah, he's coming back to America soon.
He is, thank goodness. Well, it's not like Iran is something that people are avoiding talking about here in Washington, D.C. Obviously, we've got the political scenario, but we also have people who are pretty anxious about it. Mm-hmm. It came up in my confirmation class that I was teaching at my parish about a week ago. We were talking about the topic of mercy, and I asked the students, what is going on in the world right now that requires mercy? And one kid very proudly raised his hand, and he was like, the war in Iran needs the mercy of Jesus. And I was like, you're not wrong, but you're like 13. So you don't have money. I don't have very much money. You're not a president. I'm not a president. So
yet,
are you off the hook for giving mercy? And we actually had a really good conversation with our students. I was really proud of them because every single one of them had a sense that the world is way more complex than it was
Mhm.
than when their parents were growing up.
Oh, yeah.
And so they're already grasping with issues that are very clearly not black and white. They're like, the world is not black and white. And I was like, that's great. That is a starting point for Catholic moral theology. We'll be getting into that today. Also, quick side note, there were two kids that were in this class, and I didn't mention this. I'm sure their dad didn't mention this, but their father was my doctor like 10 years ago. And he like really insisted that I get on prep. For listeners who don't know, even though everyone knows, prep is, we'll just say, like an anti-HIV drug,
Yeah.
right? And I was always like, I literally do not need that. It would do nothing for me. Thank
I
you.
I am in a committed relationship with one guy, and that's not going to change. We don't have an open relationship.
This is
Yeah.
even before the relation. This was just me being out and nothing's happening, right? And 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 I had like a little bit of a chuckle that he he's asking me to get on prep, and I'm here talking to their kids about what Jesus wants in Iran. So
Spiritual prep.
here we are. Okay, so we'll be talking about a theologian that we haven't used in any of the podcast episodes before. So Jean-Luc Marion. He is one of the top 40 in France. So they would say, I think it's like immortals. There's a French academy, and it's basically, here are the top guardians of French culture, French language, and you only get into this society if they believe that your thoughts are going to be permanent and stay with all of humankind forever.
It sounds like a really intense Billboard top 40 music chart kind of thing.
So I'm pretty sure it was actually a society started by Cardinal Richelieu. So there's like some Catholic connections, and there's like a legacy thing.
So you're saying we're not going to see like Miley Cyrus and like
No, it's a
Somber
French
on
society. I don't think you're going to see any American in this.
That's fair. That's fair.
But Jean-Luc Marion has a really cool concept that's important to Catholics who feel unwanted, whether that's just because you're not fitting in the parish, whether you're divorced and remarried and are not able to receive communion, or if you're gay and just people feel like you're a project to be solved. Jean-Luc talks about this conceptual idol. So he says, we have this tragedy in the Catholic faith where we demand certainty. John, you and I've talked about this before. Like, clarity is a very dangerous thing in faith. It's good. It's good for recruitment. It will get a lot of people in your pews if you can say, this is what you need to do. Check this list. You'll make it to heaven. Go off, be a good priest. That's your calling. You know?
I do love me a good checklist.
Clarity is helpful, but it can also be super dangerous.
Yeah.
And he says that a lot of times when we think we've captured God and we like really understand him, or we're following all the rules of the faith, we've actually created a sort of mirror where we're looking into it. We're not looking at God, we're looking at a reflection of our own desires to feel in control.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why he says he's fiercely Catholic, by the way. I mean, when the seat became vacant and he got elected to this academy, he was actually taking over for the Cardinal Archbishop of Paris. So this is a seat that people generally think of as Catholic, and Jean-Luc Marion is fiercely Catholic. So when he's critiquing us and he's saying that addiction we have to certainty is bad, he means it. And he offers a replacement. He calls it the icon. So everyone knows what an icon looks like, right? You've seen them in churches before. Well, the icon looks at us. It's terrifying because, in a sense, when you're looking at the icon and you're really grasping it, like you're looking at the Eucharist and you're praying before Christ in the Eucharist, it's terrifying because you can't control what that means. The icon is supposed to gaze at you and see you for exactly how God made you and all of the messy things that are going on in your life. And it's unlike the idol where you try and control or project this sort of sense of control. So we'll be talking through that today. John, in my notes, I have under clarity is dangerous to ask you about timeshare presentations, but that wasn't it.
I'm not the one that sat through timeshare presentations.
Okay. By the way, right after I asked the kids about mercy in my confirmation class and we were chatting about Iran,
Please tell me you didn't try to sell them a timeshare.
No, but I promptly left for Mexico for vacation.
That is valid. That is valid.
So no, I mean, but you've told me the story a couple times before where you convinced a friend once about a fake vacation.
Oh yeah. So just for clarity for our listeners, my background is in marketing and sales. That's what I've done. More marketing, more, getting people on board with messages or trying to get them to entertain buying something or getting involved in something. So one of the things is I try to tell people that you can't just look at something face value based upon how it's presented to you, because it's tailored. It is literally tailored to make that person excited, right? It's if this is your target audience, if you are identified as someone who's in the target audience, they are going to know what words to use, how to phrase it, and how to use tone to portray excitement to the now. There's a connotation to this word that people like to use, but like the word I'm looking at is arousal, and it's not sexual arousal. It's arousal in the sense of it triggers that chemical release that gets you excited in your brain.
You could have just said a smile is contagious.
A smile, where you could, but it's not the same thing.
Okay.
So I told my friend, I said, look, I could easily convince you of us going on a vacation. Actually, I didn't even tell him that. I said, there's something that I was like, I'm going to do an experiment. The experiment is going to be, I am going to get you excited about something that we're going to do because I know who you are and I know exactly what to say to you and how to get you on board, that you will make a commitment to this before you even think through it. And he said I couldn't do it. So I waited a couple weeks and then I did it one day spontaneously. I was like, oh, hey, by the way. And I sold him on this idea of us like doing a road trip and just hanging out at this fictitious place that didn't exist. It just didn't exist. It, like, if you were to Google it, doesn't exist. It's not there. It took me 5 minutes to convince him to spend $1,200 and drive in a car with me for 22 hours to go to a place that doesn't exist. And he was on board so much to the point where he brought out his laptop and started looking at hotels in the major city that was near this fictitious place, and he wanted to book it. And I said, oh, and by the way, this is all fake and made up.
I'm glad you knew what I was talking about, because now I know exactly why I wrote John's timeshare story.
Exactly.
I trust you. I want to believe that I wouldn't fall for it, but I might.
So my thing is I didn't do it out of a malicious intent. Now, a lot of times when you listen to commercials on TV or you go to, let's say, a timeshare pitch, they're going to tailor their presentation to their target audience. Like when you watch TV and like you get a pharmaceutical ad on there for the newest prescription drug, right? They're going to have visual representation that is going to be key to a target demographic that they're trying to get to.
Right.
And if you don't identify with that, what do? You tune it out.
Yes.
Right. Or unless they're smart and they have a catchy jingle, then it gets stuck in your head like 1-800-CARS for kids. I've never used them, but I've listened to them on the radio 24/7. It's a catchy tune. That's the thing, is if it doesn't identify with you where you're at currently in your life, you're not going to pay attention to it. But if it does, and you're having a conversation and you hear certain trigger words, it's going to get your attention.
Yeah.
And that's marketing. That's 100%. How you go about doing it.
So, yeah, Chris and I just went on vacation to Mexico. We were there for a wedding. We were at a resort in Cancun.
It looked like you had a great time, by the way.
We did. I did no politics while I was down there. And it was
politics?
Amazing.
Wow.
I got to say, it was really refreshing to be somewhere where people did not care what was on the news. So, anyway, you got to do it every now and then.
Or they're wearing the mask where they didn't care.
That's fair. That's fair. Well, Chris and I, we did one of these timeshare presentations, right? But no, I love it. I loved the presentation.
But you didn't buy it though, right?
No.
Good. Okay. Just, I got worried.
I want to laugh and say who would, but I know that people do. So I was really fascinated by the theater of all of it and how meticulous the planning was. And a lot of it didn't occur to me until after we had finished the presentation. So when we got off the shuttle and they're greeting you, you think that the bellman is just greeting you, right? And he goes, welcome. Are you celebrating anything? And we're like, no, 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 no. He goes, well, anniversary, a wedding. And we're like, it's not quite our anniversary yet. So right there, he knows we're married. Okay. We get to the front desk to check in. Again, as they're, I never know why people at check-in desks are constantly typing messages. Like, what could you possibly be working on? I'm waiting to check in, you know? Anyway, this man's typing up a storm. He's also asking questions that I thought were just useless banter. And then he nods to somebody and they come over and they grab our bags and they help us up to our room. Well, half hour later, we are downstairs looking for food and we see an employee who's like very flamboyant. Okay. He's in the same concierge uniform, but he's very flamboyant. And he like waves to us and we're like, hello, yes, we too, we see you.
I think one day we need to make a video podcast because like the gestures you just made while doing that, I think would add so much context to this thing. It's so good.
Oh, Yvonne in Cancun, we love you. You know, no, and here's the thing. He was absolutely not either my type nor Chris's type, but we just loved him because he had this energy and we wanted to be like, we know you're in a tough part of Mexico and we see you and we love you. But we continued walking. We were like, we got to get food. We're hungry. Yeah. Afterwards, he's still hanging out by the same elevator bank. And he goes, hey guys, where did you meet? And we were like, oh, you know, just on. He goes, well, I had a terrible time on Bumble. And we go, we met on Bumble. Okay. So we had a really fun chat. And then suddenly he goes, I wanted to make sure you have the coupons that we have for you. It's like $40 off this, $40 off that. We're like, okay. And then he pulls out some sort of mini contract. And that's when it hits us. He is about to try and sell us on something. And he was like, it's not a timeshare presentation. It was, spoiler alert.
What?
Technically, it was I think Hyatt calls it the Unlimited Vacations Club. Fast forward, we signed it. We signed the contract to go to the presentation. All you had to do was 90 minutes at the breakfast, listen to the pitch, and you get $400 off the spa, right? Easy day.
No strings attached?
Well, I mean, they try and pressure you during the...
I mean, there's that. But like, you don't have to like promise to sell your kidney or anything like that. Like,
no.
It was, like, there was no... Okay.
No, good. But here's the thing. Like, he was so good at his job that even after we realized that we had been taken for a ride, we still loved him. Yvonne, you're the best.
And you got $400 off the spa.
We did because we went to the presentation with one of his colleagues. Here's the fun part. We never saw him again at the resort after that moment.
Oh.
And we kind of think that they had like typecasted us and they had pulled Yvonne because everyone else that was at the wedding had a couple of different other people reach out to them. But we were the only ones that had Yvonne. So we went to the presentation though, and there was this like highly orchestrated certainty. And this is where it ties back into Jean-Luc Marion and that conceptual idol, right? And again, it started from the moment we stepped off the shuttle. They were deciding who would greet us. What I said to the guy who was drawing like the numbers and the figures on the legal pad in front of me, by the way, he's writing out the numbers for, it will only cost you this. But for me, I'm looking at it backwards and he's going too fast, so I can't even see it.
It's very car salesman.
It was.
Yeah.
And I was like, listen, if your goal was to sell me on how superior the quality of your hotels are and how wonderful the locations are that they're at, you have sold me. You have beat out every other place I've gone to visit and you have sold me. But if you're trying to sell me on this like rigid, disciplined contract while I'm on vacation, so that's not doing anything for me. Okay. By the way, they send in one more guy. They're like, okay, fine, we'll wrap this up. They send in one more guy.
The closer,
who is also writing on a pad. It's weird that the final closer was like a nerdy guy who sounded like Gru, you know?
Gru from Minions?
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And so he was so annoying that I pulled out a timer on my phone and put it right in front of him. I mean, listen.
Who'd you learn that one from?
Yeah, I know. I thought about you and your car sale. Go back to episode 19, guys, and you'll see this. But the point being, when I was like, listen, man, this ain't doing it for me. He goes, okay, I tried.
I like how everyone has a slight Italian accent.
It's the only one I can do.
Guys.
You're either American or Italian in my world, and that's it. You're like, wait, this took place at a sushi restaurant. Why did he sound like that? No. But the point is that there was this orchestrated certainty, and I thought it was fascinating. But I went back to our room later that day, and I was like, OMG, where have I encountered this before? Take a guess.
No, it couldn't be that one group from college.
Duh.
Focus.
Yeah, Focus. Here we are. Focus. Can you explain Focus Missionaries?
So it's essentially a young adult group or organization that really focuses on college age kids and either trying to develop their faith while they're in college, because we all know college is a godless, heathenistic place. Not always, but just saying. Or they're trying to bring people back to the church, right? So they're trying to evangelize or trying to bring people to the church or trying to develop young adults' faith in probably their most vulnerable time, other than, their adolescence, when they're going through religious education in their home parish. But now that they're out away from their parents, their real first experience of adulthood, if you will, it's a pivotal moment in their faith, and they target, for lack of better terms, that college age of young adults to help develop their faith.
Yeah, and before we go any further into this, I just want to say a lot of people have had a very complicated relationship or experience with Focus.
Yes.
That is not unique in the church. We're not here to bash Focus. There's a lot of good. And actually, I'm going to talk about the theology that, quite frankly, is brilliant.
Mm-hmm.
And there are some things that are innovative, especially as the way that they talk about salvation history. I mean, innovative, new takes, new spins that I don't believe were in the Catholic Church before this moment. And they're kind of going mainstream, and they're working really well, and they are validly, perfectly Catholic.
Yeah.
And I also want to say that as far as people having a bad experience with Focus, that's not unique. I mean, literally any group in the church. So you know that I'm a member of the Catholic community of San Egidio. We have 50,000 members worldwide, and we're dedicated to the pillars of prayer, poor, and peace. Okay. We have a rule against rules. So you would think that we're like a very safe organization. Like, you're never going to be manipulated here. Yet I've heard stories of people in other countries with San Egidio either being made to feel lesser because they weren't participating in the same way, or manipulated or made to feel bad that they weren't doing enough for the community. Thankfully, that's not the experience in Washington, D.C. And as we're going to talk about later, the lower pressure a model is in missionary work, the less successful it is, and that is this really unfortunate, ugly reality, ugly tension that in order to really be successful in recruiting numbers, whether that's at a timeshare presentation or it's a missionary, you have to be really structured, overly structured. And on that note, I mean, I remember getting a discipleship contract. So I don't remember precisely what they called the document, but I was super uncomfortable with it.
Yeah.
And I want to say we did look this up. We found out that they have stopped the practice. It's probably fair to say it was pretty darn close to theologically unacceptable.
Yeah.
But what they were asking was good. It was like, go to daily mass, go to this, do that, confession once a week, Bible study, participate in Catholic campus ministry.
It was like the intent was good.
It was excellent.
It wasn't something to like try to make anyone feel bad. Just saying, these are ways that we have seen people improve their faith life is by doing this, and this is what we feel like you should do in this pivotal moment of your faith life.
But if you're going to reduce a relationship to a sort of contractualization, those obligations come from baptism. They do not come from membership in a parish.
An annual fee of $35 now.
There was no annual fee.
There was no fee. It's a joke.
However, if you wanted to go on the retreat...
Yeah, well, I mean, retreats cost money. That makes sense.
They do. And to be fair, as far as I remember, the priest at our campus ministry was actually really good about finding donors to help supplement for students that couldn't. So no complaints there. Anyway, bottom line is they're not doing contracts anymore. And I'm thankful, because that would put them more fully aligned with the church.
Yes.
So were you given a contract? I don't remember. Were you like a disciple, by the way, is when you have this sort of mentorship with Focus, and you do a Bible study with your disciple leader. Were you part of that?
So they thought about it. I remember I had a
What do you
conversation
mean
with
they thought about it? They pressured me.
well, you have to remember, I transferred into George Mason,
Yeah.
right? So I came in after, 2 years at another university, and I was slightly older than everyone else there. So when I came into the church, what would be my junior year at Mason, I was automatically put into like the graduate Bible study with Focus missionaries, and they didn't really see me as like that incoming freshman or sophomore that was trying to find their faith. So they tried to get me into discipleship, but they didn't feel like they really had anyone that would be able to kind of relate to me where I was in my journey.
Well, as you mentioned, it is a very vulnerable time.
It is.
People are out of the house for the first
Mhm.
time. People are away from their home parish for the first time.
Which is huge.
Yeah. And that structure is helpful. And I think they did help me build a lot of really good habits. The contractualization of the relationship is a theological major red flag. But again, as far as we understand, they're not doing that any longer. Missionaries did take us to lunch. They did say, "Hey, will you join my Bible study?" And so in that sense, the it worked, right?
Yeah. And I will say this, they were very open to me when I was in the process of converting to answering some of the tough questions I had. And I will give them credit that they never turned me away when I had a question. So I will give the missionaries, at Mason during that time, that's the only thing I can speak to, credit for actually being willing to sit down and talk with me through those tough topics.
There was a missionary that I talked to fairly frequently when I was in college. And again, this was literally one person. So
Mhm.
I'm not saying this represents the views of Focus, but he had told me that people come out of the closet to dull the shame that they feel. And it really stuck with me. I remember my immediate reaction was like, "Oh, yeah, they do." And like immediately I'm filing into my head, "Okay, put a box around this, We're not we're not Yvonne from Mexico. We can hide this." and but it it stuck with me, and I actually avoided coming out, I estimate, by 5 years. I think that one conversation delayed me coming out by 5 years. And often wonder that if that particular person had an opportunity to discuss with me again, would they take a different path? You know, Probably not. Yeah, I see you shaking your head,
So I mean,
but
I know who you're talking about. I don't think.
probably not. But there's always that possibility. We're all trying to grow. What I'll say is that Focus is based off of Campus Crusaders for Christ,
Mhm.
who they
Crew.
rebranded as Crew. The term Crusaders became less popular.
What?
And I believe Focus was founded, I want to say in 1998 at Benedictine College. But anyway, the point is that Curtis Martin was a convert to Catholicism. And he saw that Protestants were super successful at bringing people back to Christ, at helping them be on fire about their faith. And Catholics were not. They were not. And so I want to dive into the theology of Focus because a lot of what Curtis Martin brings to the table is not only brilliant, it's unique. It speaks to American culture in a way that much of the rest of Catholic culture falls short. And yeah, it has some downsides. It's incomplete in some ways, but who doesn't look back at their work at the end of their life and say, I didn't quite capture all of the essence of God? So we don't have to be afraid of that. I guess I would say if you've read the book Theology for the Unwanted, available on Amazon. By the way, the price is now down to $18.75.
Discount.
Discount, yeah. If you've read the book, you know that it opens up in a very dramatic way. John, how does it open up?
Oh, it's super dramatic.
You're like, what am I reading?
The world is at war. It literally starts with World War II. It starts with
Yeah.
the destruction of Europe.
Yeah. That Europe had a very structured, very certain faith. We call it
Yes.
neo-scholasticism. We don't need to get into what that is particularly. We found a lot of it in Northern Virginia, to be frank. But in Europe, they had a very certain set of rules. I mean, knowing whether or not you were getting to heaven could be very certain. You followed the rules. You didn't do these sins. You met your obligations. Boom, heaven. You know. But a lot of people after World War One started to notice that, hmm, the bishop in the country I was just fighting against told his people to fight against me. How can both my bishop and their bishop be representing the same God if we are told to fight against one another in a holy war? And I think that damaged the faith of millions.
Yeah.
Millions. They were like, maybe this inherited faith doesn't make the same sense that it did for my grandparents. Maybe now that we can vote and we can have a voice, we can also choose our faith. So it created a sort of modern crisis for the church. The Europeans didn't really get serious about that path until they got smacked down twice after World War II, and there was rubble everywhere. I mean, absolutely everywhere. The point I make in my book is we don't have rubble in the United States following World War II. We didn't have to literally rebuild everything. And so we are not ready for Vatican II here yet. The Europeans, however, were like, looking at the way our grandparents had faith, they understood everything. They had the concepts, but they lacked a sense of the good news. And I think my opinion is that focus is actually a continuation of kind of what you saw in Vatican II. Yeah, people notice that it tends to be more conservative. At least a lot of the donors and the people that they have involved tend to be more right leaning. It is totally validly Catholic. So I do not want anyone to complain about that. But they said for college students, we need to place the mission, which is spreading the good news, back at the center. They need to rebalance after, the Catholic Church had these rigid ways, and then we got kind of loose in some areas of Vatican II. And now Focus sees themselves as bringing it back because in their mind, college students are struggling with relativism.
And this is really where the inspiration from Protestant organizations came into focus, right? So Focus kind of looked to see what the Protestant denominations were doing to kind of get their youth riled up and on fire for God. So what Focus did was saying, hey, look, if we have college age ministry, right? We have college age ministers, we have college age leaders that are, either in their last year of college, just freshly out of college. We have a bigger chance at reaching those 17, 18, 19, and 20-year-olds in college because they are now looking at someone who they can identify with. They're listening to someone who has gone through the Focus program, who has been successful, who is now a missionary with Focus, and it's someone who has what they can perceive as a similar life experience, a similar life journey. They were just in college. They better understand what that college kid is going through than, let's say, someone who's 50, 60, 70 years old who's been teaching religious education in their parish for the past 30, 40 years. They're not going to have that same ability to identify and relate with those college age kids. So why not use college age peers to mentor those kids coming into college? And you mentioned relativism. That's a big thing. You add materialism in there too. You add technology and how there's so many things vying for everyone's time and energy and day, every single day, day in and day out. It's very easy to stray away from your faith. That's what Focus is doing, is saying, hey, you can still do this and keep your faith. And maybe you can even utilize some of these other things to help strengthen your faith.
Father Peter always told us, like, saints have saints for friends.
Yes.
And that was really good advice because on a human level, when you're in college, you're looking for people to surround yourself with who are going to be like-minded and maybe challenge you in healthy ways. And I think it was fairly successful there. There were definitely some moments where I think a lot of us felt pressured to make it seem like, oh, our freshman year, we had really struggled with sin. And, and Focus and Catholic Campus Ministry helped us overcome our life of sin. And now we've, there was a lot of that.
Okay? There was. It almost felt like you had to say it.
Oh, yeah. And I had to be straight, so.
But I will say this. The whole thing about saints having saints for friends and a lot of us having friends that were able to challenge us.
Yeah.
Honestly, that's one of the reasons why I started talking with you and Mason was because you were someone who I saw could challenge my thinking during my conversion process.
We've swapped roles all these years, man. But the theology definitely mirrors the big four of evangelical Protestantism. So if you remember, after oh no, you didn't sign the contract.
Oh no, I didn't sign the contract.
Okay,
I,
so
I just hung out with the missionaries and had a beer afterwards.
got it. Well,
Beer and Bible study. God, it was so good.
so after I signed the contract and they were training me in the focus ways, of course, we got that sheet that was like how to avoid being too salesy, how to avoid being, because we had to do gospel presentations. Now, as Jean-Luc Marion would say, if you are able to practice your pitch for faith in the mirror, you are literally looking in the mirror and you are trying to reflect your own desire for control. And there was an element of that, right? Like I wanted to be seen as a good Catholic, and a good Catholic is going to recruit more people to the faith. And at the same time, we're going to have genuine friends. Here we are, like you and me sitting across from each other after all these years. But the pitch that they taught you on Catholic salvation history is super Protestant, but then it was brilliantly stretched.
Yeah.
To include reflections from St. Catherine of Siena. She was a great doctor of the church in the Middle Ages, a powerful figure, an example how a woman can change the course of Western history. Look it up on your own time. But it started with this idea that God created us to be together, right? And then with sin, with our choices to turn away, we kind of splintered off from him and we created this huge canyon. Think like the Grand Canyon. I kind of remember this image of like two cliffs and I'm on one side and God's on the other. And they said Jesus is the bridge. So you have God's plan, sin and consequences, the solution, who is Jesus Christ, and we would also say like the Eucharist and the sacrifice of the cross. And then it demands a response from us. Jesus Christ has built the bridge, and now what are you going to do about it? How are you going to change your life knowing that this bridge is here? You're going to take it. You're going to go across the other side. And it's super powerful. Now, this is definitely what Vatican II had in mind. I think that Curtis Martin and what he has brought to the table is new, it's innovative, it's fully Catholic. And I think it's really cool that he found a way to bring his original like evangelical roots and turn it into a gift. And now his vocabulary in some ways is also my vocabulary. So I appreciate that. The challenge is to prevent it from becoming a mirror or an idol and to make the faith more of an icon that gazes at you. You have to figure out how to make it an encounter, how to make it something that lives within you. And the weird thing is when you sign a contract and it's like, all right, got to get you ready to be this Catholic soldier in the next 2 to 4 years. I think St. Catherine of Siena would say, thank you so much for using my writing so heavily. And she would also probably slap Focus silly because she and her writings really exited this human timescale. You and I have talked about this before. Italians sometimes say it is good to waste time. We don't think that way in America, do we?
Definitely not.
Yeah.
It's there's another 30 seconds available. Cool. I can do X, Y, and Z.
Exactly. And that's why we're so much richer.
Are we?
Yeah, we are. But the point I was trying to make here was not about the wealth gap. No, when somebody comes to homeless ministry for the first time, their immediate thought is, okay, I can pack bags. I can, make sandwiches. I can put stuff away. I can clean the floors. They want to do something. And I always say, no. This is a Catholic ministry, right? And the most important thing that you can do in this moment is to waste time. When you waste time, you allow the mystery to kind of inhabit you. So go find a homeless person sitting at a table and sit down and listen. And from that, a sort of like authentic personal piety develops where you two enter on this journey together towards a better life. They change you, you change them. But most of the time, sitting and listening is the best way to have a spiritual experience during homeless ministry. That is not what I experienced at Focus. They were doing something very different. They were demanding a virtuous life.
Yeah.
And you hear that and you're like, oh, dang, this is a good idea. How come the Italians didn't think of this? Well, they did. And World War II happened. And now they're trying to walk back a lot of the traps that they fell in that we are now creating for ourselves. Don't get me wrong. Demanding that personal piety and that mentorship is beautiful. But in order for it to be an encounter, you have to learn how to like graft yourself. Have you ever heard someone say, I'm just using this example because I felt pressured to conceal my sexuality and I felt very pressured to hide what I was feeling and even put on a big front so that nobody would know. You ever heard someone say, like, oh, homosexuality is unnatural?
Oh, all the time.
Okay. Hopefully not all the time, but like in Catholic circles.
But yeah, in Catholic circles and a lot of evangelical circles too, like that's a very go-to phrase.
Yeah. I mean, you see it all the time on our Instagram. People comment with St. Paul, to which I very quickly refer them to Vatican document Che cosa l'uomo, which explains quite explicitly that St. Paul was not talking about sexual orientation. No, really. I mean, like I send this document to so many people every week, and maybe a quarter are like, oh wow, thank you for telling me this. It was just something I heard on, Evangelical Network. And
Yeah, and I think that's the beauty of some of the comments that we get is the people who actually come in and they're not trying to be toxic, they're not trying to be hateful. They come in and they it's very easy to tell when someone wants to have a conversation.
Yeah.
When someone is open to listening or new information that the church has put out to really help guide them, because they're coming from a place of faith. They're coming from a place of what they have learned, and that's what they're doing. So to those people who are open to dialogue and everything, I applaud them. It's the trolls, it's the toxic people that come that just hit with, every overused Bible quote that they don't understand and they just throw it in there and they start using slurs left and right. Those people are the non-serious people.
To be fair to those people, St. Paul absolutely was opposed to same-sex acts, you could say. He was not talking about sexual orientation. He had no concept of it. The Vatican has been super clear on that is a Catholic perspective. But he does kind of have this red flag that he raises. And the church has had various explanations over the centuries as to, the context and why. So it's not like I'm totally trying to dismiss these people. I want them to have a much deeper reflection and a much deeper discernment. Now, to the same people that say that, because again, I felt really pressured to put on this front that wasn't real. St. Paul also tells us to be grafted. You know what grafting is?
It's a plant thing, right?
It's a plant thing. Yeah. It's also a gay thing to be a plant daddy, So, but basically you take part of one plant and you cut and then you wrap it around and then they fuse together and they grow and they become one plant.
Oh my. Okay?
Yeah. That is super unnatural.
It sounds like it.
Literally cannot happen in nature. Yet it's something that humans have been doing forever and St. Paul references. So what we're aiming for is not a personal piety. It's a communion. Your virtuous life is super important. Avoiding sin is super important. If you have done that, congratulations, throws confetti. But what we're trying to do is build communion, this spiritual sense of unity, and not like, hey, I'm a gift to you. And because you found me, now we can all be unified. No, it's a sort of like, I have nothing to offer, you have nothing to offer. And through Christ, we've been grafted to one another. That sense is not something that I got from the Focus ministry. Now, to be fair, they came in with the perspective that college students are just floundering, not flourishing, and they're going to provide a very structured path for a very lost group of people. And to that, I think they are super successful. I don't know that I would apply the Focus model outside of college, and I probably would make some pretty serious changes to the current model within campus ministry now. But, when you're talking about reconciliation as a solution, yikes. That is an exit from Catholic vocabulary. And not to say that is like a theology that they are pushing, but that is absolutely the vocab that we heard. The sacraments are something to be encountered. They are something that are supposed to inhabit us, to live within us, and you can't put this time frame on it. You know why, John?
Why?
You ever watched Love Is Blind?
More than I should admit to,
All
but
right.
yes, I watch it.
Can you explain the show?
So Love Is Blind is one of my favorite trash reality TV shows on Netflix.
We love trash.
Look, it's just so addictive.
Plants and trash.
Plants and trash.
You know what is also addictive is certainty.
This certainty is very addictive.
Yeah, but it's not healthy.
And in fact, one of the couples in the most recent episode of Love Is Blind broke up with their fiance because he thought she was too certain.
Really?
Yeah, she bought a wedding dress before she went to Love Is Blind.
Oh, I did. Yeah.
So he was like, "Oh, you were going to get married regardless of who
Yeah.
came into the pod."
No, I saw that. I watched that. Sorry for the spoiler to anyone.
Yeah.
But I got to admit, I heard that and I was like, this dude was looking for an out anyway, because that's just not a reason to break up.
It was very, very pathetic. But Love Is Blind, two groups, guys, girls, they meet in pods. They can't see each other, but they can talk. And the idea is to build an emotional bond, not one based on physical attributes of the person. So you get engaged in the pod, sight unseen, and then they have this reveal moment that my anxiety spikes during. And they meet for the first time in person, and then that's when they start their the emotional
engagement,
bond, like overcome physical differences. And you always hear, "Oh, you're generally not the type of person I date." So that's Love Is Blind.
Rude, super rude thing to say.
So uncalled for.
Yeah.
So uncalled for.
So, all right, thinking about the concept, they are trying to build relationships not off of physical appearances, but off of encountering the dignity of the other.
Correct.
Yes, I am applying a theological lens here. Would you say that concept is virtuous?
Yes.
Super virtuous. It mimics in many ways what we see Focus trying to do, because it's countercultural and it forces people to encounter one another for all that they are. The only thing that it's not similar to is a recruitment style, because I remember like the back to school barbecue, and we would literally we'd have everyone fill out like a little postcard with information on them, and then we would pass it around and then decide who was best equipped to like contact them. Be like, "Will you be in my Bible study?"
I remember the day after the luau.
The luau, that's what we call it.
We
the
would
pig
have
roast.
20 volunteers taking those cards and entering it into an Excel sheet.
There's got to be a better way. There probably is by now.
There probably is by now, but and then we filtered out people based upon their responses and kind of said, "Hey, look, you're good with,
athletes.
You're good with homeschooled Catholic kids who are now in a public university. You're good with people who are struggling with faith." And they were divvied up to these Focus missionaries to reach out to them, to follow up, to invite them to Bible studies, to invite them to Thursday night suppers and all this other stuff that CCM was doing.
I mean, people become targets. We assign missionaries to them based on potential rather than a complex dignity mindset. However, I do remember when we would do intramurals, you would sign up and it'd be like, "Are you signing up to have fun?" And I would cross that out. And I'd be like, "I'm here to win, baby."
I'm here to win.
I mean, that was my approach to basically everything Catholic.
I mean, what CCM was back to back defending champions in soccer, intramural soccer.
We were.
Yeah.
We got letters from the Vatican's ambassador.
We did. I remember that. We were.
He's no longer Catholic, by the way, but that's a different story.
I remember people bringing Vatican flags to the intramural soccer matches.
Yeah, they were.
To cheer on CCM. It was so cool.
Well, we create this sort of opening pitch, kind of like the timeshare. And then we use this very well tested in American culture, like the big four: the God's plan, the sin and consequences. 3 is the solution, and then the response, right? That is really, really good for building a cohesive deck or roster of people who are going to go be your Catholic soldiers. Pope John Paul II, who loved Focus, by the way, Pope Benedict and Pope Francis have all been super clear that you can't treat that particular pitch as a beginner stage that you have to overcome. Pope Francis said that this has to be a Trinitarian event. So he's, Father, Son, Holy Spirit. And the 3 of them are constantly almost spiraling down and diving deeper into the realities of your life. And it's something that happens over and over and over again. It's not like I accepted the gospel and then, now I've neatly packaged everything and you can understand it all.
Yeah, I mean, the way I saw the whole thing break down with this was the luau was like, we're gonna put this in terms that I can definitely relate to. Baking. We're making cookies.
Okay. Love
You have
cookies.
all these incoming freshmen. That's your cookie dough. Then they get broken up to missionaries to go after certain groups within that set of cookie dough. That's your cookie cutter. The issue with this method is if you do not fall into one of these cookie cutters, you're the leftover scrap dough. And I feel like that's where focus kind of struggles is if you can't be identified as someone who has X, Y, and Z, and you can't be put inside of this cookie cutter, it's very easy for focus to hyperfixate on those that fit inside the cookie cutter model, and the other students who aren't in there fall to the wayside. It happened year after year after year. We would have over 1,000 freshmen at the luau, and maybe 200 would stick around because they were talking to focus missionaries. They fit that model,
Right.
and they kept coming back, and they created community within CCM. But everyone else fell to the wayside, and we never saw them again.
So I don't think we actually talked about this, but the cookie cutter model, that is exactly right out of Jean-Luc Marion. I think he calls it the saturated person.
Oh, I guess I'm up next to be one of the 40. Look at that.
We'll have to start one in America and you'll be number one on the list.
Yes.
But the idea is that God is so big, so vast, that it's almost hilarious that we think that we can neatly understand him and capture him. And so in using that cookie cutter model, the cutter itself, that shape, it's basically whatever our mind's rationality can handle.
Absolutely.
And there's so much cookie dough that it's like flowing beyond that, and it's like going onto the floor and out of the room, and you look at your baking pan and what you have is silly. And so in that way, if we're not careful, if we say like, oh, this is the only way, right?
Yep.
My description of salvation history is the only way. Now, there's many ways to be Catholic, right? There's a lot of ways to not be Catholic too. But if you say that my description is the only one, you have turned your faith into that conceptual idol.
Yeah.
Right. And what we want to create is not cookies in the shape of a gingerbread man, but we want something that gazes back at us.
Yeah.
The other thing he talked about with the saturated person is this idea of, I haven't really thought about how to explain this, the gift.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Let's say you know somebody who had a parent pass away many years ago, right? And they get a letter in the mail from, the county court or whoever deals with inheritances. I don't know. And they say, you have $500,000, right? How do you feel in that moment, right? Like the pain of the grief is years past.
Mm-hmm.
And now you have this potentially life-changing letter ahead of you. How do you react when you open that letter?
I think it's gonna be tough if you've never experienced it. I think it'll be a mix of emotions, right? Like it's, oh wow, like this is something that my past relative left for me.
Yeah.
But it's also going to bring up the fact that that relative is no longer there. So the question is like, would you rather have your relative or the money kind of thing? So I can imagine it would bring up a lot of mixed emotions.
So maybe I made a mistake in bringing this into a money concept because it's very American of me, but but it's this idea of this life-changing event that came from your parents that you had no way to anticipate. You didn't know about it. The grief has started to heal, and now your parents are, and of course we're not talking about you, this is hypothetical, but now your parents are like giving to you, right?
Yeah.
Once again, when you thought the gifts were long past.
Yeah.
It's got to be overwhelming. And from having this $500,000 inheritance or whatever it is, there's going to be taxes and obligations and like some other legal paperwork. And that can be stressful too.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a gift in a theological sense because you can't thank them. You can't go to your parents who passed, 5 years ago, hypothetically, and say, wow, this is really kind of you. Thank you for being so thoughtful. And so, what is it like to receive a gift where you can't thank anyone? The problem is that in American Catholicism, of course, that gift is grace, right? But in American Catholicism, we often run right to the obligations,
Hmm.
and we have like a contractualization of the gift.
Yeah.
And the obligations are important, right? You're going to have to file this with the IRS. There's no way around that. It's much better if you just do it. It's much better if you go to daily mass and confession weekly and avoid sin. It's much better. But we lose the sense of the gift, which is something that gazes at us from afar, and there's no one to thank. There's no one to like really concretely in a human way to thank. And that is how Jean-Luc Marion would explain this. We've talked a lot about holiness being an off or on switch for many Americans. Do you remember? Did you have any sense of that when we were in campus ministry together?
Kind of. I feel like it's not just in faith that we have that. I feel like it has to do with other situations that we find ourselves in. But you could definitely see the change in people when they are walking into the campus chapel
Yeah.
and walking out of the campus chapel. I mean, there
Well,
was a
explain that.
so obviously, like when you are going to the campus chapel, you're going for a reason. Either it's daily mass, maybe it's confession, maybe it's adoration, maybe it's Bible study, maybe it's whatever you're doing. You are going there with the mindset of I'm going because I'm doing something I need to do for my faith life.
Hmm.
When you're leaving, you're not leaving the church going, you're most likely not thinking about next week's Bible study. You're not really thinking about,
You're
oh,
like, I'm on my time
yeah,
again.
you're like, I'm not thinking about next time adorations
Yeah.
occur. And you're going, oh, I have that one exam. Oh, I'm supposed to meet up with so and so. Oh, I promised dinner with so and so. All of a sudden, like it's the worldly things coming back into your mind. So that holiness switch, that feeling you get in adoration, after confession, after mass, after you dedicate your time to learning more about your faith and practicing your faith, when you're walking away from the chapel, from your parish, it's easy to flip it off and then start focusing on all the other worldly things. And that's where you turn the holiness off, is by doing that.
Hmm.
You lose sight of what you just did.
Especially when you're on this time frame where you're like, I have 2 to 4 years to become that soldier,
And it's tough because you only have 2 to 4 years, and you get reminded of it constantly.
You do. And again, that clarity is so dangerous.
Mhm.
It can be very helpful. It can actually bring us peace
Yeah.
because, when something's clear, like you cannot come out of the closet and you're like, oh, then I don't have to have 50 conversations where I cry and weep in front of people who are judging me. That clarity that I got during my time at George Mason was super helpful. It was, in hindsight, terrible, but it was super helpful at the moment. And so when you have too much clarity, or holiness is like an off on switch as opposed to a way of becoming that inhabits you, then when you go into the Eucharistic chapel to discern, you often just end up making peace with your own expectations.
Yes, 100%. It's very easy to project your want and your will when you're having a conversation with God, when you're in Eucharistic adoration, and then having that positive experience in front of our Lord. You automatically assume that whatever answer you're looking for, that's the one God gave the thumbs up of approval for. It's very easy to, for lack of better terms, trick ourselves into thinking that this is God's will when we go in with a problem that we already know the answer to. We're hoping that God's going to tell us, yes, that answer is right. It's very hard as a human to be told no, whether it's by an authority figure, whether it's by a friend, a family member, let alone by God. So it's very, very dangerous to go into conversations with God and automatically project the answer that you want the outcome to be.
So in Catholic moral theology, as Professor James Keenan would remind us over and over, the definition of mercy in a scenario that's not black and white, it's going to be entering into the chaos of another. So if you think about what Christmas was, Christmas is not Jesus bridging the Grand Canyon. Christmas is Jesus literally coming to inhabit among us. And so I think the clarity, the usefulness of the focus model that they use for gospel presentations, it has a really important place.
Yeah.
I do not want it to go away. I think it can be employed in wider ways. I would pretty much immediately rip up any sort of expectation of the program that it's only supposed to be like 4 years, right? There's no practical way to do that on a college campus. You cannot, the messy reality is you cannot form someone fully in 4 years. Okay. They wouldn't even try to do that in seminary.
I mean, they can't even do it in religious education in parishes.
Yeah.
Because if they did, you wouldn't need young adult ministries. You
Yeah.
wouldn't need these ministries after religious education in your parish.
But here's the reality that we live in. Students are away from college for the first time. They are often floundering. I don't ever think that someone should feel that the faith is imposed on them, because then it immediately becomes that conceptual idol.
Yes.
Okay. Truth can be an idol if you can understand all of truth. If you think that you have the fullness of truth in your mind, it's probably an idol. And the Catholic faith calls this as something that's so much deeper. It's grounding, because you can never finish looking at it. I've talked a lot about that mosaic in Rome, 4 million pieces, the tiles. I've never finished looking. I have been to Rome 20 times.
Show off. I've never been to Rome once.
Look, I am such a bad Catholic. Just let me have this.
It's fine. It's all yours.
Hey,
go for it.
I've never finished looking at this mosaic, and I don't think I ever could. I really don't even if I made it a lifetime project, I don't think I ever could. And that's kind of what the Eucharist is, where it's gazing at me and it's changing me the more that we look at each other.
Mm-hmm.
I would say that, unfortunately, we are on college campuses for such a short time of our life, and you have to do something, and focus brings a lot to the table. And so that's the reality. There's a lot of jargon and talk about relativism and, tolerance. And I just want to make it very clear that in theology, if you're talking about tolerance and relativism and you're making it sound like that's them, that's not us, you could be falling into a category trap.
Yeah.
And in that sense, if you are categorizing someone and then you are also saying, but over here, we are doing the Bible study, we're doing the virtuous stuff, we're doing the good stuff, you are theologically doing the exact same thing you did with the tolerance and relativism. You are creating a category trap, or as you called it, like the cookie cutter.
Yeah.
Right. Because you're trying to contain everything within that. And you lose the sense that, it's way more complex, because what do you mean that the Baptist Student Association has a food bank and serves more homeless people than we do? Or what do you mean that the Jewish and Muslim Association is, I don't know, they're perceived better because they're doing this and that? And these categories do not create a sense of unity, even though that clarity is super helpful.
One of the biggest things that I wish Focus would change.
Okay.
They're very good at getting college kids excited.
Yeah.
About their faith, putting them on fire for God. Now, granted, they do it in a very short period of time, but looking back, they talk about this, especially your senior year, but I don't think they've developed a good way to prepare you for this. When that cookie cutter comes down at the end of your time in college, going back into parish life,
it's tough.
Is so drastically different. I have watched some of the most devout people in CCM leave college, go into their local parish, wherever they're living now, and lose their faith because they didn't have that structure that they relied on so heavily. And that is probably one of the biggest things I would want to challenge Focus on changing, is finding a way to keep not the structure, right? I'm not saying I want people to leave with the structure surrounding them, but put them in a place where they're able to face these challenges they're going to have when they go back to parish life.
Catholic campus ministry during my time there very successfully helped me not come out of the closet.
Mhm.
And therefore, nobody had to deal with the messy reality that I was pushing down. And I experienced a sense of peace because I didn't have any turmoil, you
Yeah.
know? But then you graduate and, years go by and I still have to live in this body that God gave me. And I have to live the life that God created me for. And I no longer have that support system that says, hey, you can keep this quiet and I'll support you. You know, now I have to live the messy reality. And as I remind people all the time, theology is nothing more than reality.
Yeah.
Doesn't have a political opinion, doesn't care what your thoughts are. God is. Okay. And whatever is created is. So as we close out here, going back to my confirmation students, you know, the kid that was like, we need to end the war in Iran. And I was like, okay, but you have no money. You're not important. I'm not important. Are you off the hook for mercy? And the kid was really stunned by this because he realized I am not off the hook for giving mercy to these people in a far, far away land. And I have no idea how to do it. And so, going back to the way that Catholicism thinks about salvation history, we're grafting ourselves to one another. Christ came to inhabit himself among us in this messy world. And I said, guys, the reality is there's people all around you in Washington, D.C., who are shouting on the streets. I'm talking about the homeless. There's a lot of like harassing people passing by. And I was like, you know what? They don't do that when they come into the homeless ministry in this parish, not because they feel like they have to be on their best behavior, because we let a lot of things slide, to be fair, but it's because they feel seen and because we waste time. And by wasting time, we get to know them. And so I said, by thinking about what's going on in Iran, you should understand that you are called to enter into the chaos of that by being present with those around you. Okay? And so mercy, the true calling, the true vocation of a baptized Christian, it's to be present with others. And I didn't feel that when I was in college. I didn't know that I didn't feel it. I thought I had all the answers. I had too much certainty. And of course, I had the Catholic faith, which I believe to be true. I really do. And like Jean-Luc Marion, fiercely Catholic. We have to be there for one another. And so many of our listeners feel unseen, unheard, unwanted. Hence the name of the show. So John and I, every week, as we always do, we will listen to your stories. You can go onto the website, go to Theo Unwanted on Instagram or TikTok. We're there to listen. We're not therapists.
Definitely not there.
We are not. And we do hope that you find a qualified licensed professional in your area, but we are there to listen and to affirm your dignity, that no matter what you're going through, who you are, that you are beloved by God. And we are really excited for where that journey will take you. So until next time, thank you for listening to Theology for the Unwanted.